Hello and a warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you all are. So let's get started. Welcome to this webinar on how can university spinouts help support the UK as a world leader in science and technology. So let's dive straight in. So, introduction. I know I should tell you what I'm about to tell you, and then tell you what I've told you, but I'm going to do things slightly different this time. And firstly, we're going to start with a poll, which I believe my colleague Emma is going to pop on your screen shortly, just to ask how many of you attending today have been involved in a university spin out in just some way, so that I can get a feel as to whether you have or haven't been involved. Going forward, inadvertently click that. There we go. Perfect. And then we'll dive straight into, well, why are we here? Why are we here? Well, we're here to learn, and not learning from a legal perspective, more about the sort of commercial knowledge points to do with university spinouts and their position in terms of helping the UK remain, in my opinion, as a world leader in science and technology, and get an understanding as to why university spinouts are so fundamental and why institutions such as yours are so very, very important in getting these amazing forms of science and technology out into the market, into the people that need them the most. So we're here to learn and hopefully get some exciting information all about spinouts and how important they are. Who am I? I'm Laura Barrell. I'm a senior associate at BWV. I work in their commercial team. So disclaimer, and I'm a lawyer, so there had to be one, of course. Not too bad, but there will be a slight commercial sort of perspective on today's talk. And also I specialise in pharmaceuticals and life sciences. So there will be a life science focus on the science and technology as well. But hopefully you'll find it very exciting, and ultimately as exciting as I do with some of the companies and the higher education institutions that I work with. And Daily, well, why is it important? Well, it's important because, you know, given what we've gone through and we're going through with COVID, with Brexit, you know, there's lots and lots of things going on, which mean that the UK, it's really, really important that we stay at the forefront of lots of things, but in particular in the area of science and technology, where we are a world leader. You know, all you have to do is look at our genomics program, for example. You know, we're really at the forefront. And if for a higher education institution, for a university, you know, and you're trying to attract overseas graduates or, you know, graduates from the UK, you know, it's really important that we're really pushing ourselves and continuing to maintain a reputation that is well earned in this country of having some of the finest institutions in the world and some of the best scientists and graduates. So it's really, really important. What will you learn today? Well, hopefully you'll learn lots of things, but you'll learn about specific elements of your university spinouts that make them stand out in terms of ensuring that the UK remains this world leader, and how as a higher education institution you have this fantastic role in ensuring that we do that and being a part of that journey. And I'll take you through those specific parts as we go through, the good and the bad. I want to say the ugly, but there's no ugliness here today. And where will this be relevant? Well, it'll be relevant everywhere, to be honest, whether it's professionally or personally. It's in everyone's interest that, you know, the UK remains a world leader in science and technology, whether, you know, you're a patient or you're a person or you're a colleague or, you know, you're just interested in this area. Okay, so let's get going. Let's dive straight in. Well, why are university spinouts important to this issue of the UK being a world leader? Well, it's all about inciting innovation, you know, really getting this innovation, this innovative spirit out. And that's what university spinouts are so great at. You know, universities and their spinouts, they perform this great role, firstly in terms of supporting businesses and communities. A lot of universities are involved in their local community as well as much broader, and bringing together this element of lots of things coming together at once And we will talk more about collaborations later, but they've, in terms of how university spinouts function and universities in this area, they're really at the forefront of this support, business and communities in that particular model. Secondly, it's about promoting local and national innovation, particularly in high-risk technologies. It's these unknowns, which is really what innovation is about. It's about, going where, no man has gone before and thinking, I've got this great idea. What can I do? What research project? Oh, this could be a fantastic commercial application. What can we do with it? How can we spin this technology out into, a particular sector or into a market and really get it to the people that need it, and show our institution for the amazing place that it is and the amazing work that we're doing. And that goes on very nicely to helping to facilitate collaborations and develop national programs and agendas. In terms of ones that our government set, higher education institutions play a fundamental role in ensuring that these fantastic ideas and agendas that are put out are actually put into practice. And the example I put there is the Genome UK programme or agenda, however you like to call it. And what that programme is about is ensuring the UK's place as a world leader in genomics and in terms of personalised therapies, focus on your genetic makeup. And if you read the report that Genome UK that was published by the government, it really puts universities at the heart of that agenda in terms of bringing the technology forward. And in the implementation plan that was recently published, again, it specifically mentioned higher education institutions and startups, which realistically together, in my opinion, they were talking about spin-outs in terms of getting this amazing technology, this innovative technology out into the clinic to the patients or as part of primary care, a national pathway. That's really important. And universities have an amazing place to play there, as well as the technology they spin out into these university spin-outs. And last but not least, bringing those people into the market with these skills, ensuring we have a supply of graduates coming into the country for our, partners in industry, as well as in academia, feeding that pipeline, all really, really important stuff. But where this really matters, and this is where we get into the science technology side of things, is in disruptive technology. So in the technology, it's going to disrupt the market, really make it a game changer in a particular sector. And if your institution is spinning out technology into these spin-out companies, that really gives I've put competitive in inverted commas because we're not competing with each other. Yes, we are, but in a way we're not. It's, in academia, it's more about bringing these amazing projects, into the field, then into the market and making an idea a reality, but also putting your institution, out there. I want to go study at this, academic institution because they have a history of disruptive tech. They really embrace the new and, they're not scared to see where these things can go. Secondly, about being attractive to overseas investment, funding students, ultimately Brexit has caused a lot of concern in this sector in terms of funding. And I know that one of the aspects that's really, really important is that if you are bringing these disruptive technologies, these exciting forms of science and tech out into the world, or even as part of a research project, because not all university spin-outs make it to commercialization. The point is that overseas entities, charitable bodies, are looking and thinking, oh, I'd like to get involved at that, apply for my grant, apply for my funding, and overseas students saying, I want to go work at that institution because they have a history of spin-outs and I could get some commercial experience as well as academic. Thirdly, for me, it's also about acceptance of failure and a proof of concept mentality. So I was talking to an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Oxford recently, And she said one of the fantastic things about spinouts and how universities foster this creative thinking is there's an acceptance of failure, not saying that you go out to fail, but the idea that it's a research project. It's a great idea. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, or it could work in a different way, which can be very different in a commercial setting. So it's not always going to work. Let's do a proof of concept. Let's see what we can do. Let's work for the partners, but let's really give it a try. But it's okay if it doesn't work. And then nextly, it's out of the box thinking or outside of the box thinking. We had an internal discussion on this recently. It's really thinking, if it's disruptive technology, it's something really different. It's going to disrupt the market. And that's what, in my opinion, universities and their spin-outs are great at. It's not being afraid to really attack something that could be seen as different, a game changer. And it's that the next point, environment of experimentation, and looking now towards commercialization. It's not just about the research, in terms of the academic sphere, but it's about pushing that commercialization point now. Where is the research impact? And that now is a very important point. So let's get into the detail of why university spin-outs are so fundamental in terms of keeping our position as this, this forefront, this runner, this world leader in science and technology. And in my opinion, you have to approach it from two perspectives. And the first perspective is an academic perspective. And I think it's really, really important because ultimately, as an academic institution, your primary objective, is research in terms of teaching as well. So, why is a university spin out, which often focuses on the commercialization aspects, why is that going to have this academic benefit? Why is the academic going to like this? Well, the first one for me is research. It's very much about quality research. And often with university spin-outs, it gives the technology the space and the freedom to really grow and expand and be tested. And in turn, that research can be fed back into the university and can be shared with other research projects. The academic itself is learning new skills. They're learning how to take their research into a commercialization space. They're learning about the intellectual property that's sitting around their research. It's building those skills in terms of not just the research itself, but the research that they're doing to broaden their skill set and pass that on to the students that they're working with. Secondly, recruitment. And this goes back to the point, the sort of introduction side was talking about this need for attracting students as well as ensuring a good graduate supply, keeping that talent and that skill set in the UK. Doesn't always happen, but if we keep it in the UK and we embrace it and we invest in it, we're going to solidify and maintain its position as a world leader in this area. So we want to not only bring people into the university in terms of recruitment, academics, commercial people. There's lots of wonderful people that work in academic institutions and their spin-outs. But it's also about recruitment in terms of students as well and ensuring that talent pipeline. And finally, from an academic perspective, recommendation. Now, we all understand the pressure to publish, if you are working in an academic setting. And university spin-outs are great recommendations in terms of your scientific talent, your academic capability. It's not just a research project. You're looking at getting it out there into the market, commercialization, building those additional skills. You're recommending your institution and your spin-outs to be more. And that is really, really special. Okay. The next side, or the other side of the coin, the second point, is the commercial side. So we had the academic side, and now we're looking at the commercial side. And that's really where, when you're spinning out technology, which is where your university spin out technology, or sort of terminology comes from, when you're spinning out this technology or this particular asset, you've got to look at the commercial goals because, what's the research impact? We all know that that is an additional consideration for universities. There's a lot more pressure than there used to be on this particular point. So I think, okay, we'll think about the 3 Ps when it comes to commercialization and university spin-outs. So we've done the 3 Rs of academia, and spin-outs, now it's the 3 Ps. And the first one is promotion. Again, if you have university, if you have a spin-out that is doing very well, they're raising funds, they're going into the clinic, they've recruited a very high level commercial person or a management position to lead that spin out, that's all promoting the higher education institution, the university, because again, it's a university spin out. It's always feeding back to the university. At the same time, it's independent, but there's, the other side of that is that there's always this historic connection between the two. And it's that promotion of this spin out has done this, spin out of the University of X or the University of Y, in a collaboration with, it's all about promoting the spin out, which again has this promotional effect for the university, which leads to, again, quite nicely, your students, your investment, etc. Second point is performance. So we know that we have, as a higher education institution, there are pressures in terms of reporting on research impact and where there's been commercialization from research, and so effectively something's come out of the lab in that particular way. And by utilizing university spin-outs and spinning out this technology with a view to commercialize or go out into the market, it's that performance tick. You're saying you're performing in this way, you are commercializing, you've got your research excellence framework or, whichever grant body reporting line, you're helping get that, referable element to the research you're doing. And thirdly, productivity. If you are doing amazing research projects and you're creating some fantastic work, in the lab, in the clinic, wherever you're developing these projects, if you are spinning that technology out into a separate entity, you're showing this level of productivity in your organization, in your institution. You're also giving your students and academics the opportunity to develop new skills, which in turn can make them more productive because they are having to challenge themselves in new ways, they're having to look at things from different angles, and just building that level of productivity inside and outside, which university spin-outs can really do if done in the right way. Now, I said that I would get on to collaborations, and here we are. Now, collaborations have a very, very special place in my heart, and I absolutely love them. And the work that I do with higher education institutions and spin-outs often involves lots of research and development, collaboration agreements, and for been in pharmaceutical and life sciences for over a very long time now, over a decade, and the amount of collaborations that essentially have come in has increased, as well as the scope of collaborations. It might have been a big pharma and a university, or it might have been a grant body and a particular spin out. It all depends how it's structured, but now you get these humongous collaborations, these multi-million-pound collaborations, but also very small collaborations as well, ranging from a couple of £1,000 to a couple of million. And so it's a really exciting place to be. But why are collaborations important? And what is their connection to university spin-outs? Well, I'm going to give a case study in a moment, but let's just go through what we've talked about and apply that now to this practical example of collaborations. We'll look at the 3 Rs. If you've got research in mind, you're looking at recruitment and you're looking at recommendations, collaborations can really help foster that. If you're entering into a research project and you want to test different elements of a form of technology, you might need to bring in an industry partner that has a specific product for you to test your theory on. You might need to go through a collaboration in terms of bringing additional expertise, and you're recruiting in through a collaboration additional brains into a project. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be an academic brain, it could be a commercial brain. You know, it could be a corporate brain, it could be an intellectual property brain, a data brain. There's lots and lots of reasons as to why collaborations can assist in really hitting those 3 R's. And finally, recommendations. You know, if you've entered into a collaboration and with an industry partner, and that industry partner is, you know, going out and talking to other industry partners. They did a fantastic collaboration with the University of X the other day. They're fantastic. You know, what they've got in their pipeline, you should really go and meet with, you know, X. It can be a really great way to share the load and spread the word. Again, let's look at that from the commercial side, the 3 Ps. Well, promotion. Most collaborations are launched in terms of their press releases, if it's a significant or high value collaboration. Sometimes it's just about promoting a research product by saying X has joined the project to provide much needed expertise, equipment, funding. Yeah, and that in turn can lead to additional productivity, which is your next P, in terms of students saying, did you see that the university did this with this collaboration, or this spin out of this university has collaborated with X in order to develop this technology or bring it into this market. And finally, performance. Well, if you have, you know, they say many hands make light work, and this is where collaboration comes in, because in order to perform, if you're measuring that against the matrix, if you have more people coming in where you're having additional investment, if you're having additional equipment or resources in that way, that's going to enable you to perform quicker and hopefully get the results and your proof of concept and your commercialization, and get that spin out really functioning and doing what it's meant to be doing. The next point, which is possibly one of the most important to a lot of university spin-outs, is funding. So, you know, when you look to do a university spin-out and you're thinking about, well, how are we going to fund? Well, you know, it's much more likely as a spin-out, you're going to be able to get investment through large investment bodies or individuals, because those angel investors or investment groups are more likely to be putting large amounts of money into university spin-outs that are corporate entities that sit on their own, rather than into university as a body. And therefore, it's a great way of attracting commercial funding as opposed to the traditional funding of, you know, from grant bodies that will give you specific amount of funds for a specific project and may even put conditions on that project. So by allowing the university to spin out the technology and ring fencing it in this spin out, that spin out can go out and seek its own funding in a commercial way. Yes, you can still have grant body funding. There's nothing to stop spin outs applying for grants, but it's that extra avenue, and that can be done through collaborating as well. Opportunity. Again, if you go out to collaborations, and if spin outs can go out and say, well, hang on, here we go, I'm going to go collaborate with an international partner, and that also helps bring the UK forward as, like, you know, this university, this spin out is leading this form of technology. We have, you know, this institution from America, we have this industry partner in, you know, Asia that wants to work with our spin out to help commercialize this technology. And it gives you that ability to go much broader than potentially just if you keep things in-house, where you can still do international projects, but, you know, it might be, in terms of resources and having that focus, looking at that international collaboration as opposed to a UK specific one. Next one is risk, which is a really, really important one, and one that you'll probably be thinking about a lot when you're thinking about spinning out, or you're looking at, well, hang on, how are we going to make sure we're a world leader? And that means being successful, ultimately, a lot of stuff, because you're leading the way in a form of technology, or in this case, science as well. And you can use collaborations to help, like, with these proof of concepts, i.e. testing. and that can be you're working together, as opposed to just potentially outsourcing and then having to pay to have that theory, that technology tested. Working together can really bring that to the table faster, and without having that risk of going out, not knowing who you're dealing with, almost a service provider style arrangement. The next one is, well, sale potential. So if you look at the statistics around university spin-outs, there's always a lot of conversation around, well, the university has spun out technology because they're looking at a sale plan and effectively harvesting, these assets from the institution into the spin out. That's not always the case, and I think sometimes that's a very high level view of what university spin outs are designed to do and achieve, and I don't really agree with that. But obviously, sale value is very important, and for the university who's looking to capitalize and ultimately make money from the spin out, because that's part of the attractiveness of it. If you are collaborating with lots of people, you are naturally networking. People are recommending the spin out and the technology and talking, and that's about building that network. So people say, oh, I like the sound of that, I might invest in that, or actually that would be great with this program. Hi, big pharma, do you want to purchase this? Because this will be great for your diabetic program or for your oncology project that you're running with X. As opposed to going out there and trusting in the people that are looking to acquire, which is absolutely fine again, but collaborations can help make things a bit more comfortable. Not always. Do I need another disclaimer? But ultimately, there's a good reason for building a network through collaborations. Finally, knowledge sharing. Now, I have a feeling some of my data protection colleagues may be watching, but essentially knowledge sharing is a fantastic way to really bring your technology forward very, very quickly. And if you collaborate, you can often pool your data to really get, real world data, again, proof of concept, bringing it into the clinic, particularly if you're going into trials. The spin out is this commercial entity looking to take this technology into the market. Collaborations help you pull that data and get that proof of concept, which is so important in order to commercialize. If you don't, you've got to do it all on your own. That can take time and it can cost money. So it's a balance. It's always a balance. I'm probably going to say balance quite a lot. So this is an example. I'm going to whiz through this because I'm conscious of time. But this example is again about collaboration. And Oxford University spun out a particular form of technology. It was to do with rapid COVID testing. And the spin out was ultimately acquired by Crinetics. But what led from that was actually a multi-million-pound collaboration between the University of Oxford University, and Crinetics to create this fantastic molecular diagnostic centre. And it really showed the UK as this world leader in this particular form of technology and the science behind the molecular diagnostic technology, as well as the science of testing and rapid testing at that. So this example is where the spin out actually attracted the sale, the golden sale, but it led to a collaboration, a very valuable collaboration for the higher education institution off the back of the spin out. And why it's a great example of how it wasn't a collaboration for the spin out, but it led to something great for the higher education institution. So it's funny how things can work out. This example is actually the flip side of this. So in this case study, you had a collaboration. So essentially you had Cancer Research UK alongside some commercial partners, as well as UCL Business and the Crick, Francis Crick Institute, sorry. They all came together and created this amazing biotech called Achilles Therapeutics. And they are doing some absolutely game-changing cancer immunotherapy technology. And it's disruptive technology because it's a game changer. And effectively, this was a collaboration that led to, it's classified as a spin out, although I'm not too sure if I agree with that. But for the purposes of this, it's still very exciting. So this is the opposite of the example we had before, which was where the spin out, the sale led to a collaboration. This collaboration led to a spin out, and that spin out went on to raise over $170 million when it raised money publicly on an IPO. And it goes on to really show the statistic which I put on the bottom, which is where you have billions of pounds of investment in terms of focusing on this spin out of companies. So these are both really good examples of how collaborations can lead to some really fantastic things in terms of university spin outs, the UK, and ensuring we're a world leader in the science and technology field. But I want to just take a moment to step back at this point in the talk, because one size does not fit all. And like I mentioned, 2 different case studies there that were very different, to just really remind everyone that every spin out, every environment in which that spin out sits, and the decision by the university is unique. And you can't think, well, that worked for them, so I'm going to do it again, or that failed, but I'm going to do it again because if I try again, it might work this time. Every single time you're thinking about spinning out, or you're looking at, well, is this spin out working for us, or what do we want to do? Always take each situation on its own facts and really think about what you and the academic and the team want to achieve from this. And now I think we're going to move on to some practical tips and takeaways, because as exciting it is hearing about all these fantastic things that are happening and how great these things can be, but what actually are you going to be thinking about, when you're looking at university spin outs, in order to then be attractive and the UK itself as a world leader? And it's all about balance. I'm doing this because I am now the scales. And I'm going to talk about the disadvantages first, because I always like to end on a positive. So we're going to do the disadvantages first. And when you're thinking about spinning out, and we're thinking about, well, is this good for us? Is this good for showcasing spin outs as for the UK in terms of what we do? Well, if you're spinning out, if you're taking this technology out of the university, well, you naturally lose a slight bit of control. Now, that's not always the case. It really depends on how you structure it and how the academic wants to do it. Sometimes you don't want to have any involvement because off you go, we've done what we want to do, we don't think it has any merit, but if you want to take it further, you can. Or this is really exciting, we want to keep this within our control as much as we can, and we're going to negotiate some sort of licensing arrangement that has a bit more control to it. So yes, you are spinning out, it's going off into a separate legal entity, but there's always elements of communication and how things can be figured out. But that is often seen as a disadvantage, that it's going away from the university. But I would caveat that it's not always quite that simple. There are subtle conflicts as well. So, often you will have an academic that will lead a spin out initially, but that academic will also be an employee of the university. And so it's making sure that everyone has open conversations about what each is going to be doing, what it expects from the other. And sometimes it's a very subtle conflict because everyone's very happy, but it's just about keeping an eye on that and making sure that everyone knows where they're meant to be. But again, it's often a case of communication and just keeping an eye on things. But this leads very nicely onto the next disadvantage that often people associate with spin outs, and that's that there's a time pressure for academics, because you're not just, in terms of being an academic, in terms of your research projects and your teaching commitments and your publication commitments for your papers, you're also now being expected to run a commercial entity and everything that comes along with that in terms of finding collaborators, finding commercial entities that you want to work with, service providers, engaging legal advice. There's a lot more to be done than necessarily if you just license it out to a third party to take that technology and run with it. But that has its own issues. So yeah, there can be some time pressures involved, and again, that has to be carefully managed. Next one, unpredictable outcomes. It's often seen as a disadvantage. Well, we don't know what will happen if we spin it out. Well, I don't think a lot of people know what will happen if you license it out either. except you definitely don't know what will happen because someone else will be in charge of it. But sometimes that works. You know, again, it's about what you think is right for you with this project at this time. So yeah, it can be unpredictable, but that's also part of why it can be amazing, because sometimes fantastic things can come from it. I'm very conscious I'm doing all the advantages with the disadvantages, but maybe it's just me because I'm just such a bright and bubbly person. I'll try and be a bit more negative. There are more pressures on the university in terms of resources. So obviously, if you're looking to spin out, you're going to have to put contracts in place, have discussions with your academics. There might even be some funding issues potentially if you're splitting out. There's a lot to consider. But I would say that there's always a lot to consider. I'm doing it again, aren't I? So yeah, there can be more pressure on the university. It's a financial gamble. You know, you could put a lot of time and energy and resources into spinning out potentially, depending on what the arrangement is. And that can lead to nothing. You know, there is a high failure rate. So again, it is a bit of a gamble. And there are legal issues. And you know, for my colleagues that are listening to me today, it's very important that I stress that, you know, there are charity law implications when you're taking commercial assets out of the university, and there are corporate considerations when you're setting up a spin out in terms of, you know, just because 3 academics have developed this technology doesn't mean that they necessarily should all be equal shareholders in the business. You know, sometimes it has to be thought through in terms of ownership and who should have control, and there are subtleties in there that go beyond necessarily the initial research project. And if you don't discuss them early, it can cause problems down the line. And sometimes people just don't want that. But let's go on to the advantages, because I think I'm a lot better at those. And the flip side of this, I've put, there's actually less pressure on the university in terms of resources, because once you've spun out, it's up to the spin out to go off and make that a success. And often, sometimes you can have that the technology has to return, you know, to the mothership if, you know, the technology in the spin out is not commercialized to the extent that it should be. But again, that's one of the beauties of spinning it out, is just saying, look, you've got this time. If you don't do it by then, it has to come home, or go off and do it. It's up to you. You know, we have our patent, we're happy with that. And if you want to go and see if this has commercial application, you know, you can. So again, sending it on its way can often mean less pressure on the university rather than licensing, where you might have to keep an eye on it, make sure you're getting paid, make sure the licensee is not doing something it shouldn't. Next one is it ring fences your risk, because you are, again, I'm not a charity law expert in terms of how moving the assets out should be done, but the point is, in terms of intellectual property, which is more my area, is that if you are able to move that risk, even though sometimes it often stays with the university, depending again on what you've organised, you can ring fence the commercial risk of trying to go out into the market and bring partners in with a particular form of technology. And that can be quite exciting as an idea. There's a commercial focus in that, you know, we're looking to commercialize. Let's go, like, let's really focus on getting this to the market and getting a product. Again, that's really what spin-outs are great at. Skills creation. People, you know, I had one academic who's leading a spin out recently say to me, I've got students knocking on my door wanting to be involved in this spin out, because they just want to be involved. It's so exciting. They want to build their commercial skills. They want to be involved with a company where they're taking this innovative form of disruptive technology and taking it into the market, or a proof of concept. You know, that's really exciting as a scientist, thinking, what is beyond the lab, and can I get a taste of that? We talked about, you know, if things are referable in your research excellence framework, you know, reporting commitments, that can have a benefit, as well as other, you know, reporting bodies in terms of commercialization, can generate income, depending if that's either the sale of the whole spin out or a royalty, potentially for that product, if the spin out then goes on to license. So many different options. And again, the legal benefits. And I've put the same point here because, you know, the contracts are often with the spin out as opposed to university. You know, the spin out is a corporate entity as opposed to necessarily a charitable one. It's not always as easy as that, but the point is that it separates it out. So let's look at some do's and do nots really quickly in terms of, well, what should we not look to do if we're looking at a university spin out and we're trying to be successful and get this spin out into the world to make the UK this world leader? Well, like I said before, don't mirror others. No, not every spin out is the same, every situation. Really look at the project and the goals in its own environment and think, okay, what's right for us in this situation? Control again is a funny one because it's a real balancing act, and here I go with my scales again, in that obviously you want to retain control, and at the beginning control is obviously there's a lot more control than as you go through in the university. The spin out effectively begins to grow and goes off on its own. You're like a child, it's growing up and it's going off into the world on its own. There'll always be that connection. At the end of the day, it's a university spin out. But again, it's about knowing when not always being in control. For example, having a majority share is the right thing if you're looking to attract investment later. So it's about having that conversation about what level of control is right in this situation. Does it work? Don't assume it's covered. See this a lot. Well, X has worked for us for years, so it's fine for them to work for the spin out. Well, hang on, is it fine? Is there a conflict? Do we need to put a contract in place? There's lots going on. Don't wait too long. Don't think, well, we'll spin out later and just see how we get on. Sometimes the earlier the better. Get some investment in, get people talking. Don't stifle the vision. Sometimes you ring fence too much, and sometimes projects can develop on their own, even in a spin out. So really let the spin out have room to breathe and expand and see what it's going to ultimately get out there, because it can be really exciting. Don't ignore conflicts. If the academic is split, then seize it. Say, right, how much are you going to commit to this? How much do you need to commit to others? Where are you going to draw the line? And is this a particular field you need to do just for this project? Have those conversations. And whatever you do, don't fail to deal with the legal aspects early. We talked about corporate and charity aspects, and I also mentioned contracts as well. Think about the IP, where it's going to sit, who's going to register it, who's going to look after it, because that's the value in the spin out after all. Other thing is, do prepare and plan. Make sure that you think about your intellectual property, how it's protected, who's going to use it, what happens if they don't, how are you going to structure the spin out. Ownership is a big one, but also in terms of who's going to be responsible for driving it. Educate the key players, make them understand what it involves to run a spin out. This isn't just a toy project. This is very much very, very important commercial entity. This is exciting now. Will it still be exciting in 2 years? Let's have a discussion about what this involves. Is this really what you want, or should we just license? Communicate, talk to each other. Make sure the university spin out reports back, but also again, for the spin out's perspective, they want to understand that if there's a project you're working on, they could possibly put their tech into. There's this, mutually beneficial arrangement, which is why spin outs can be so fantastic for higher education institutions. And again, I'm going to say it again, ask for help. Don't just assume it's going to be okay. I know a lot of people don't. This again is not every situation, but make sure the legals are considered, the financials, how it's all going to work. Tech transfer officers are amazing. They have some fantastic people working for them. They ask some great questions. Make sure you utilize these fantastic individuals. Everyone works together really, really well, and I think that's just one thing it's really important to stress is what you do, and most of the people who listen say do that really well anyway. Support each other. Obviously, make sure it's a creative environment. We want to get the UK out there as a world leader. Stressful disclosure. Even if you fail, something goes wrong, tell us about it. It's okay. Normally it can be fixed or we can talk about it, but don't leave it. Monitor the spin out. Make sure that it's looked after and allow room for growth. Allow room for investors to come in. Make sure it remains attractive. I'm very conscious of the time. So I'm going to sweep through this really, really quickly, and then we should have 10 minutes left for questions. But what the case study I want to finish on is one that's very close to my heart, is the university spin out that we've worked with, as well as the higher education institution as well. The University of Bristol and Cytoseed Limited, which is their spin out, have just been, in my opinion, goal setters for university spin outs and the way they work. They work together so well. Cytoseed have raised this, over £3.5 million recently in terms of building this artificial membrane binding protein platform, actually for cell therapy, and hopefully we'll work towards cancer treatment. And one of the investors specifically said, and I've put it in the slide, that they were impressed with Cytoseed's academic credentials. It was the spin out element, the university, this academic element that really made them shine. And that relationship between the spin out and the university was really lovely to see. And Cytoseed is growing, more people, they're going towards commercialization. And it's just a real credit to both the institution, spin out, and really, again, has shown just the UK as a world leader in this form of science. So I couldn't help but pop it in there, because for me, it was just such a wonderful example of how university spin outs and higher education institutions are just doing the most fantastic things to keep the UK as a world leader in science and technology. And that's really the talk. I know I should now tell you what I've just told you, but realistically, I think from what we've said today, there's so many reasons why spin outs benefit, not just the higher education institutions they come from, but the wider UK economy, particularly in science and these disruptive technology areas, this innovative part of the sector that we're in, and that spin outs can offer this exciting alternative to licensing and help universities meet these commercialization targets and reporting requirements. Don't forget the 3 R's and the 3 P's. Look at them and make sure they work for you and focus on those. But mainly, seek advice, plan early, and look to the future, because there's some really, really potentially exciting stuff out there. Okay, so that's me. I've spoken for a really long time. So I think we're going to go to questions now. And I believe Emma's going to bring in my colleague, Nathan Guest. He's a partner at BWV. He works in the commercial team, and he's head of our technology sector. And what Nathan doesn't know about university spin outs is not worth knowing, essentially. He's worked in this area for a very long time. I won't say how long, because I don't want to embarrass him. But he's here to help answer any sort of corporate extra questions, because if anyone knows this sector, it's this man right here.
Thanks, Laura.
Did you like the introduction enough of it?
Yeah. I've been doing this for about 20 years, if that helps.
Great. So, do we have any questions?
I was just going to say, I've just put a little reminder out in the chat box. If there's no questions in there at the moment, but if anybody's got any questions for Laura or for Nathan now that he's joined us, please do pop those in the Q&A box. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to see if anything comes through. And while we're waiting for that, I'll just take this time to say a big thank you to Laura. Really, really interesting talk. I'm sure everybody will agree. And it's probably why there's no questions, because you covered it so thoroughly. And the session has been recorded, so you'll all have a chance to catch up on it, watch it again, share it with your colleagues, and we'll send out the recording and the slides in a couple of days. So just waiting to see if any questions come in, unless Laura or Nathan, if there's anything that you can think of that you get asked frequently, anything that comes to you often that you could maybe share with the group.
Well, I suppose, as Laura said, I spend a lot of my time advising university spin-outs and other startups and scale-ups. And like Laura, I'm a huge fan of spin-outs. I think they're a great thing for universities to do. Some might say they're an imperative thing to do. Particularly, universities, as we know, are under more pressure than ever, not least as a result of the pandemic. And a spin-out provides an excellent opportunity for the university to publicize what it's doing, but much more importantly, to commercialize what it's doing. We are world leaders in research and development. We've got some fantastic academics, some amazing ideas. Too often, I think, probably they get stuck within academic institutions, and there are lots of reasons for that. But I personally like to see them commercialized. I like to see them given a chance. And I think getting it into a separate legal entity enables the company to raise money, and they need that rocket fuel in order to develop and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, and try and try and be first to market. They don't always succeed. They do fail from time to time, although in my experience, university spin-outs rarely fail. They often pivot, to use the technical language. And when Laura started talking about failure, I was reminded of that Thomas Edison quote, that I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that something won't work, which is always one of my favorites. But they often do pivot. The first idea is not always the best, but when you're dealing with people who are geniuses in their field, they have that ability to pivot. A university spin-out can attract new talent, people who've been there and done it, people who've scaled up tech and life sciences or engineering businesses. They come with their own ideas, they come with their own networks, and these are the sort of things that just aren't available to sort of business ideas if they remain within an academic institution. So no, I'm a big fan of spin-outs, as you can probably tell.
Great, and that leads me straight into a question which has just come through. So somebody wants to know, investors often want academics fully involved in spin-outs, but academics and unis want want academics to maintain academic careers and continue developing high quality research. What's your view about the correct balance?
I'll have a go at that, Laura. I'll have a go at it because it comes up all the time. So I'm a corporate lawyer by training, so my role is largely advising tech and life sciences spin-outs and startups on fundraising. So I see this regularly. Of course, I mean, investors don't just invest in ideas; they invest in the people, the management team, and often spin-outs, certainly at the outset, the management team are people who've come out of academia. So investors want to know that those founders are sort of spending their time, or the bulk of their time, driving the business they've invested in. They'll often seek a whole time and attention clause. Now, in some cases, the academic or an academic part of the team will become a full-time employee on completion of the investment, and in that case, it's a fairly clear-cut thing. They are only now an employee of the spin-out. Where it gets more difficult is where there is an academic founder who actually will remain in the university, and that might be for their own, because that's what they want to do. It might be because there isn't an obvious role for them in the spin-out. It might be because they are so important to the university. There might be a head of faculty or something that the university doesn't want to let them go. There's no sort of perfect answer or perfect solution to this. The key word is balance. It's finding a way, generally through some form of consultancy or collaboration agreement, where the academic can carry on their role, and indeed is encouraged to carry on their role, but where the company has the right level of access to them. That is not too difficult to achieve. That the challenges actually come around what happens to the intellectual property that academic develops in the ordinary course of their duties as an employee of the university, but which is in a field which is still very similar to what the company is doing. As a corporate lawyer, I know little bits of things about lots of different things, but I always defer to my colleagues for the real answer. So when we're talking about IP, Laura, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ultimately the university, the technology that the spin-out is utilizing has come from the university. And so it's the academic is often key to that. So there's a discussion about, firstly, the core IP that's come through from the university, as to whether that can be sort of dealt with on its own without the academic involved anymore, depending on who else is involved. But also, like Nathan was saying, in terms of the additional IP that's created as a result. Now, often the university might want to be involved with that as well. And you can talk about the intellectual property on its own, and how the university can utilize that without the academic that's necessarily so important, or how the academic can give a certain amount of IP to the spin out, but the university can keep an eye on that. the main thing for me is it's about not being afraid to discuss the intellectual property, being very open with, this is what we're doing, this is what we've created, what do you want to do with it, can we do this with it, and then putting an arrangement in place, because there are so many different ways of arranging how and why IP is to be created and used. You know, having a conversation and just possibly, talking about that can really get everyone to a good place in terms of academic time, as well as, making sure the university spin out can still go off and do what it needs to do, because it's not going to get anywhere unless it's got that fire and that passion and that expertise behind it.
Just one final point on that. I think, the usual expectation with any spin out is if it has raised a decent amount of money, a good chunk of that money, in fact, you'd probably say the bulk of that money is really going to be spent on recruiting people. Obviously, it's development of the IP, but that often comes through people. So, the usual position is that the company becomes less reliant as it grows on the original academic team, and becomes more reliant on the people that have joined the business subsequently.
Great, thanks both. And we've just had one more question that's just come in. I think we've got about a minute to go, so hopefully we can squeeze in an answer. So somebody's just asked if you could comment on the type of collaborative agreements that work best.
Laura?
I might have to give a bit of a legal answer here and say there is no one size fits all. But what I would say is the best collaborative agreements are the ones that are thought through the best. So don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations on intellectual property, funding, time, like you said, in terms of utilization of employee time. Because what tends to happen is people rush through collaborations and don't consider these fundamental issues. And if the university spin out becomes very successful, they just come up later down the line, like, hang on, you've not considered who's going to own the new IP here with this person working. Or what about in this patent license, you've not taken into account improvements, but the collaboration obviously involves those. So often addressing the difficult points early and getting a really good draft in place at the start can make things a lot easier down the line. I'd say that's my main tip for your collaboration agreement.